So I've noticed that LastPass has gotten, compromised, I think probably one or two times in their entire life. And I was just thinking to myself, there has to be a better way that we can do password generation. I mean, we could always store our passwords in Bitwarden instead, but here's how I went about creating my own password generator. Okay, so this is what we're trying to achieve. We're gonna create a website that generates passwords using Flet. Flet is essentially a library that allows us to build Flutter apps within Python, and Flutter is an app development platform built by Google, typically written in Dart, but if we're using Flet, we can use Python. So Flet's implementation is independent of Google's. It's like a smaller team that's doing it, so certain things still have to be finished. I believe they're working on creating a Flet Studio for mobile development, increasing some controls, adding Go as a language. I believe they're adding Go and a few other languages. I think it's like 2 or 3 that they're working on, but right now it only works with Python, but this is what we're going to build. So how I started off here is I'm going to import a kind of a backend for the password generation called passgen.py, and we're going to go over that in a second. And then I also import Flet as ft. That's typically how they import it in their documentation. I guess it's just a shorthand for it, but essentially this is our backend. I started from the bottom here, but here we go. Import random, import string. I'm going to explain why in a moment. So first we're going to define a few classes, well, not classes but functions. So if we go here, this is the main one that we're going to use. This is the one that we're going to use to generate passphrases. The passphrases are taken from here, adjectives and animals. So if you go down here to the function passphrase, the first passphrase, we're using 3 different passphrases. So if you see here, it's like 1, 2, 3. And then how we're implementing it is the first passphrase, we take it from adjectives here, which is a long list of adjectives that we're going to use, and animals, which is another long list down here, but we're only using animals for the last one. So we're going to use 2 adjectives and then pick an animal. So essentially, to pick one, we take from adjectives, we take a random number from 0 to the end of adjectives. I forget how long the list for adjectives is, but it's pretty long, you already saw, but most likely probably like 250 adjectives, I believe, is what I took it from, just a random list of adjectives. So 0 to 249, and it takes it from there. And animals, I believe, is like a list of 100, so 0 to 99, and then from there randomly picks one of the indexes. So if it's adjective 2, it would pick aggressive. If it's animals 2, it would pick hedgehog. And so you'll get 2 adjectives. You'll get adventurous if you're doing adjectives index 1, and then aggressive. So adventurous, aggressive at index 2, and then we would pick hedgehog at index 2 and animals. So aggressive, so adventurous, aggressive, hedgehog is what will be generated. It will go into the password generator. From here, it will choose a random index within this string, and from that random index, it will turn that letter into uppercase. So as you see here, there's some randomized uppercase letters in here. It would pick the index at 2 in this example here, the second word in the passphrase, and from there it would go on. And that's basically how that would work. And then if you go back up here, we also do a letter change. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but these are just the main parts of what we have to do. I'll go through everything in full in a moment. I'm just showing you the different moving parts. So up here is a letter change. We're going to change these letters. So I think it's I, A, O, S, H, E, and essentially it just replaces the letter with a symbol. So we're just going to find In this example, we're gonna find I within our passphrase. Well, not our passphrase, but the single string within the passphrase, because a passphrase is essentially 3 different strings tied together by an underscore. So we're gonna find a single I if there is one available, and we're gonna just replace it with 1, and we do the same thing for all the other ones. So we're just gonna place it with a symbol. Simple as that. So top down letter change, we're going to replace one letter, or if we find I, if we find A, whichever one, we're going to replace each of these with a symbol. In passphrase generator, we simply choose a random number first, then we go ahead and we replace whatever letter is at that index with a uppercase. I'm gonna replace it with an uppercase letter, and then from there the last thing we're gonna do is do a letter change and change the letter to a symbol. See, we do it in this order because essentially the first, if we do the letter change first, then it's gonna change the letter into a symbol, and then we might error out if at the same time if we do this after we do the letter change. So say for example we take like an I that was in one of the words, and we do the letter change, we turn it into a 1, and then by coincidence it's also the index that is chosen by the random number. We try and change a 1 to uppercase, it's going to error out. You can't change a 1 to uppercase. So that's why we do it in this order, and then it simply picks from here. We could also move this up, but it doesn't really matter the order in which you do it because these are all functions, so this won't be called until the function is called somewhere else. So we do that, we do the passphrase where we select each part, and then we pass it up here into our passphrase generator function. Okay, so we're gonna do the password function. So define password. So here we're gonna set the length, we're gonna set the type. So there's 3 different types. If we go over here, we can see easy to say, easy to read in all characters, and then we're gonna do the checkboxes. So these are Boolean values, so is upper enabled, is lower enabled, is numbers enabled, and is symbols enabled. So if you go here, we can pick if we want to include uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, or if we want to include symbols. These are just different options that we have that we can include. So essentially we're going to set the length to equal to whatever length value is passed here, so that will determine our password length. And then if the type is say, we're going to check to see if both of these are clicked, if one of them are clicked, and then as you see here it changes. So it also has error capturing, and I'll show how that's done in a moment, but essentially that's how it happens. So for each one, it's just determining what combination of the subtypes are clicked and how to generate the information. So I'm just going to take a swift example down here. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's essentially just the same thing. It's just checking to see which ones are clicked and which one is not, and we don't have to go in detail on them, but I'm going to do the first one here. So if the type is equal to all, so if we select all characters, and I'm going to show what all this means in a moment. I'm just showing the back end right now of how everything works. So if the type is all characters, if upper is true, essentially meaning if the uppercase box is checked, if lowercase is true, if number is true, and if symbols are true. So all the boxes are checked, we can generate the string. So essentially it's a string. We're gonna join it to a null value that's nothing in between this single parentheses. Join random choice, so we're just gonna randomly choose from here at this certain, so we're gonna define the length, so we're gonna randomly choose something from the ASCII letters, the digits, and from punctuation. These are essentially all letters A through Z, uppercase and lowercase. Digits are 0 through 9. Punctuation is all the punctuations that we typically use in the English language, and we're just going to take all of that and we're going to return a string that's of whatever length is put here. that's essentially what's going on. This is how this password is being generated right now. It has a length of 12, so it's 12 characters within here. And essentially you just go down the list. It's basically the same thing, just different combinations depending on what exactly needs to be taken. And then from easy to read, I got rid of, I believe, things that could trip people up. So lowercase l, zeros, and everything else. Anything else that could like really trip you up that's not easy to read, I removed it. That's why I'm using that's why I have to define it completely. So ones and zeros are gone. Some in the lowercase are gone and some in the uppercase are gone. Zeros and O's are gone, that sort of thing. And I believe like certain slants are gone as well in the punctuation. That's essentially how I did that. And that's basically the back end. And then like I said, there's also something that generates if you don't pick anything. So if you don't pick anything here, like an ease of use type, it will generate please select an ease of use type. And that's essentially how that works. That's just for basically error capturing, even though it's not really error capturing, but it's like user error. The user's like, oh, I'm not going to select anything, then you can't generate a password. It's going to tell you to please select something. So that's how that works. So now let's move on to our code or our UI within Flet. So essentially we're going to give the page a title. So the title is first pass. As you can see up here, it says first pass. The background color is like this color of blue. I just really like that color. It matches with our theme, which is also dark. And I put page padding. So on the left hand side, there's about 60 pixels that we can't put any elements in, and on the right hand side it's also 60 pixels of padding, and then from the top right here between our logo and the top is about 20 pixels. So I'm going to skip the functions for now, and I'll tell you why, because the functions won't make sense unless you know exactly where they're being called. So I'm going to go down here and show you the elements of the page first, and then we're going to go back to the functions. Because it doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at the functions. You're like, what is this used for, if you don't know exactly what's calling it. So user type, that's the same user type that I talked about over here in the back end. So this is how we define it within this front end UI. So like the user types are say, all, and read. Those are the different user types. So initially it's set to nothing at all. There's no user type, but we're going to define it in a moment. The introduction text, so that's the text that's here, generate passphrase or password. That's on the screen. We set the size, and then we're going to set the text alignment to the center. So basically for text alignment, you have to put ft, which is flet.textalign.center, and then that's how you get that. So here we're going to define the text field. So the text field in question is this one. This is text field T. I made it look pretty nice in my opinion. So I put the width as, I believe, 80% of the page. So it's going to fill up this 80% here. And that's 80% from the edges of the page, not 80% from the padding. That's something different entirely, but yeah. So the width of the page, 80%. The border, there is no border here. It's a nice little clean text field. Filled, it is filled with a little background gradient, and on change update val. So and then multi-line, it can be multi-line if it goes over, which by default it shouldn't, but if the user goes over this 50 and generates a much longer password themselves, because this is a text field, they can add elements to it, then it will just overflow into another line, and then the text size is 18. But here on change, so this is where events come in. So on change is usually an event. So whenever something happens, you click something, you update the page, you click a button, you use the slider, you change the value, you do something on the page, this is where on change comes in, and then it defines whatever action needs to happen. So let's see if we can find that. Yes. So update val, the function essentially updates the value that's within the pass length. So this is this little box right here, pass length, and the slider. So if you change, since it is a text field, the user can't change how many characters it has. If you change, you see that it changes the pass length value, which is equal to the value of t, the text box. So The value of t is essentially what is written in t, and then we just take the length of that. So the string value that's within t, we take the length of that, and then that becomes a new pass length value. And then we also change it to the slider value, but the slider cannot go past 50. The pass length can go past 50 if the user decides to put something in here that's over 50, or they add something to the top to make it over 50 as well. That can be updated. And then for every single function, you're gonna need page.update, or else the page won't update, nothing will change, and it'll stay the same. And you'll be sitting there like, why didn't anything change? I expected it to change. Well, it's because you didn't include page.update within your function. And then you need e. E essentially passes over the control values. So in this instance, e would act kind of like how kind of like passing t into it, or the values of t or the properties of t into it for controlling it. That's how that essentially works. So let's go back down. Let's just breeze through the rest of this. It's not really that complicated, but I do want to show you what each element is and how I defined it. So if we go back here, the pass phrase button, it's essentially this button right here, just generates the next page, or pushes the next elements onto the page for the pass phrase to be generated. The color, which is the text color, is equal to white, and then the value is passphrase, is what we see here. And then on click, it calls up this function select passphrase, and select passphrase essentially just allows for all these elements to be viewed on screen. So let's go check that out real quick. Select passphrase. So intro text, that's do you want to generate a password or passphrase text? It is now false. Option view, which is essentially the view in which the two buttons are in, the passphrase or the password text, that is also false. Text view, that is true. So this is the text view here, this is the text box. T is visible, which is within the text view. So text view includes the text box, and I just set visibility to be true as well. And the T value, we are generating a passphrase. So this is the passphrase that is generated using the backend passgen.py. So it's basically just calling this function right here, and it just generates a passphrase that way. Then we do a generation button, that's true. That's this button. Copy button is true, and the back button to go back is true. And then we just update the page so all these elements are viewable. Simple as that. Nothing major. And essentially, the next button, password, does the exact same thing as passphrase. It calls a select password. Select password is, and the color of the text is also white. Select password is up here. So that changes all the elements that are on this page right now to false. Changes the user type to all, so it generates some sort of password here initially. Change all the elements to true. Then down here we're gonna set the value to basically just generate the password that way. So we're gonna pass in password, which is the same function that we use in the back end. We're gonna define the length, to type the upper, lower, nums, and symbols if all of those are true. So we're just gonna pass those values in based off of what is in the text box. So not the text box, sorry, the check boxes. So basically what is in the check boxes here, if it's clicked with the check, that means the value is true. If it does not have a check, it's empty, that means the value is false. And then that's how we're basically just gonna generate this text field value over here. That's how that works. Nothing major like that. And then the copy button again is true, generate button is true, go back button is true. And then this whole view right here is just the custom view, and we're gonna set that, oh my bad, this whole view down here is the custom view, and that's true. That's where you get all the customizations into it. This is what is called a card, and I'm gonna show you that in a second. As soon as we get down there, I'm just gonna go over everything really quickly. So the same thing, this is just defining the copy button. This defines the generate button. On click it calls generate passphrase, which already, well, I don't think we saw that, but yeah, generate passphrase, it just sets the text field value to whatever is generated from the passphrase function when we're doing passphrases. So over here it just generates whatever is needed. Let's go back down here real quick. Generate password button. So same thing, it calls the function to generate the password. So we go up here, depending on which boxes, which ease of use type box is checked, it simply goes through each one. So if all is checked, or say is checked, or easy to read is checked, it just checks for those values there, essentially. And then we have t.value down here. We're just going to update the password again. You know, same thing I was talking about over here with the length value, type value, upper, lower, num, and symbol values. We're just going to update that, and then the page will update. So the nice little passphrases are able to be generated. Simple as that. So yeah, we have that there. And yes, so we're gonna go back down here. That's the back button. And then here's the custom text. So that's the text that appears down here where it says customize your password. That's the text that we get to see. And the pass length, that is the text field box right here. So we're gonna set the width to 50. Value equals 12, which is supposed to be the initial value. I did change it, and I'm going back and forth, and it does store the value that you put, but initially the value is 12. If I reload the page, it'll be 12, but I'm just keeping it like that so we can just go over everything quickly. And then on change, meaning whenever we update this value, it will change the value in here. Let's see if we could get that function. Function should be up here. So it's gonna convert the text field value to an integer, set the temporary value to the pass length value, and then we're gonna check if the value that is stored within temp is a digit, and then we're just going to place the value of the pass length to whatever the integer value is, and then we're gonna update the slider value with the same value as well. So whenever we update this with like 18, oh, sorry. Click over here, 18. So edited that by accident, but 18. You could put 20, and then so both the slider and the password length field is updated at the same time. Let's go back down to here. It's a lot of code to just run through, but essentially this is what's going on. And then there is no border, fill is true, just like at the top. And the focus border type is white. So if we're in focus mode, which we're not, it'll be white. The text align is center, and the border radius is 10. So the border radius will be at the corners up here, and that's set to 10. So this defines the slider. The minimum value is 0, meaning no characters at all. Maximum value is 50, meaning 50 characters. That's what I'm tying the min and max to. And then there's gonna be 50 divisions. So essentially, we can increase this by 1 at a time. That's what a division is. So if I set the division to 10, we would be able to increase it by 10 at a time. So the value is an integer value. The thing is that the pass length value sometimes, or the pass length value initially comes in as a string value. So I just got to convert it to an integer value using int here. And then on change, the slider changes. So basically whenever you slide it across, there is something that happens to update the pass length as well. Let me see if I can find that as well. Oop, yeah, there we go. So slider change, we're just gonna update the pass length value as well. See how we're using E here? So instead of using, I believe it's called pass length slider, we could just use E, and then it just takes the E.control, and then it takes the value that's in there. Instead of how I did it before, like down here, like when I just put in T, I could have put E.control.value. These are just two different ways to do it. They both do the exact same thing, but essentially you could either pass E, or you could just pass the pass the variable directly. So after that, we're just gonna update the page. So we're basically almost there already. So here we're gonna define the checkboxes for say, read, and all. So this is just the labels, what's shown on the side, and then what happens on change. So on change for each one, let's go to this definition. So essentially they're all the same. The thing that is different about the ease of use types is we can only select one at a time, and we only want to select one at a time because we don't want it. If it's both easy to say and easy to read, then that's a completely different type of password that we're requesting compared to all characters. So we want to select one at a time. See how easy to say you can't have numbers and symbols that make it easy to say, and compared to easy to read where you can have essentially everything minus like I said those harder to read like symbols or letters. That's basically what that does. So essentially, if easy to say value is equal to true, or easy to the checkbox is basically clicked, it's true. We set the other two to false, and then we can also select number box value to false and symbols to false because those are not easy to say. And then we're gonna disable the number box and disable this symbols box over here for the subtypes. And essentially, if nothing is clicked, it's gonna generate the easy to use type and then page update. And then the all check is essentially the same thing, except we're not gonna disable the number box and symbol box. We're gonna set everything to true initially, and just start off with everything being selected, and the select box is something different as well. So each type has like something different that needs to be done for it, and this is essentially what's defined here. So we're just gonna go down here. We're just gonna define the subtype checkboxes, go through there, define the row for. So down here, we're gonna start defining the different rows. Essentially, you can call each section a view. So the logo view is, or you can call it whatever you want, but I call it views. So logo view, essentially the row that contains our image up here. If you go to the side menu, explore, we have a little asset folder. This is the first pass image. So we're just gonna take the image from the it's assets icons. So asset icons, the icons folder, set the width to 100, set the height to 100, align it as a center, place it up here. Intro view, which will take our intro text and align it to the center as well within this view. Option view, this is the row down here with the passphrase and password button. The spacing between them is 20, and the alignment is the center. Then we have our text view, which is essentially it's a column. So one column here, a column here. Within the column is a row. So column goes down like so, row goes like so, and then in the row is the T text field right here. The alignment of that is center, and then we have a secondary row within the column. So it's columns here, first row here, second row here. Copy, generate, and go back button will all be over here. Also, the generate password button is also in this row, but it is not visible at this time. Visibility is false. And we're aligned at a center. We're gonna give it a spacing of 10, and then initially the visibility will be false because our initial screen will look like this, and all the other elements will be false. Then we have our custom view. This will take our little card. It is in a column. Within it, there is a text in the first column, which essentially just behaves like kind of like a divider, but just to like give us a bit of space. You can also do spacing, I believe, but I just did it as empty text boxes or text fields. Not text fields, but empty pieces of text within it. Just for spacing. Then we have a row with the custom text, which is customize your password. The alignment of that is center, we have a divider, nice little divider down here. Then we have a responsive row, which contains a container. Within the container is another column. Within the column is a row. Within the row is a column. And within that, this is essentially where we will define our password length as its own. Within the column itself, it's at the top. So the text password length is here. Then we have a row within the column. So this right here is a row, which is a password length text field, and then the password length slider sitting within the row as well. We just align all that to the center, make it nice. Then we put another row down here. So this is all within one main column. It's encapsulated right here. So it's 2 different rows, and within each row we have different elements. So this is one row up here. Within the row there's smaller rows. I know this is a bit complicated, but that's essentially how it is. So within the row we have a column. Within each column it's a checkbox, uppercase box. The alignment, we just put it spaced evenly. Within this row, so this row here is spaced evenly, and then the outer row, or the outer column actually, which is all of this is also spaced evenly. For the alignment, the spacing of everything is 10. Then we put another spacing of 10 within the responsive row, which is essentially the container for all of this. And then from here we just put another text box with a size of 5. We put the spacing of everything as 10, and then this will all be the entire card. The visibility is false, and then we have a little elevation of 3.0. I don't know if you can see that, but it's very little elevation. If you increase it by much more, it'll be much more substantial, but it's like a little tiny elevation that we put on top of it just to give the page a little bit of depth, essentially. Then we put the GitHub icon view. This is where the GitHub icon comes in, and essentially the tooltip is view in GitHub. So if we highlight over that, it's gonna say view in GitHub. On click, we're gonna call go to GitHub. So that's basically there. And also I didn't cover that's majority of the page there. So, and then it's gonna go to GitHub. This is aligned in center, and then the page just adds all of these views with the visibility being off on some, on others. And then down here we're just gonna, this is how everything's being generated. ft.app, the target is main, so the target is the main class, not the main class, but main.py, or actually the main, my bad, not the main.py, but the main function, which is essentially what will be in main anyways. But main function, the view, we set it as a web browser. We could also do app, or I believe it's app for desktop, and you could do app for Android and app for iOS. But ft.webbrowser, and then our assets directory is going to be assets, just to define where the Flet app can find the assets. So that's basically everything. The only thing I didn't cover was how the go back button works. So we're gonna go back up here. So within the back button there is something called back action. So on change you'll call back the back action function, and it goes here. Intro text, option view, text view. It just sets the different view levels. So we're just gonna set the intro text to true, option view to true, text view false, everything else to false, just to bring us back to our original page here. And then as well as that, within the GitHub button here, if you click on that, it launches the GitHub repository for this entire page. But essentially how the functionality of that works is to go to GitHub is called on change. So if we go all the way down here, my bad, on click it is called for icons. So on click it's go to GitHub. You go up here, go to definition up here, page.launch URL. That's something built into the Flet library to essentially just launch URLs within it, which is pretty cool. So we don't have to write up our own or call another library. to launch URLs, and then the page will update accordingly to however that is clicked. And then also something I forgot to mention is this box here for the text field changes dynamically. How that occurs is essentially we do a on change, so it basically reads whatever the current page width is for the text box width, and then just puts 80. So we're gonna keep it consistently 80% of the page, and then we just update that way. And then on page resize, so whenever the page is resized, this is called, and it's just gonna call the function change text. I believe that covers everything, but yeah, that's how I did it. This is also available on GitHub. I just want to do basically an overview of everything. Still working on the formatting of how I'm doing everything, and this is essentially how I'm doing it now. I'm trying to see if I can find a better way to, get the ideas out there, but this is pretty good for me so far. But you guys let me know in the comments if you would like for me to do a deeper breakdown or go a bit slower next time. Alright, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again.